Hey everyone, today we're going to be talking about loops in Swift. Specifically, we'll go over for loops, for each, while loops, and repeat while. Let's take a look. Now, our first kind of loop, the for loop, is probably the most commonly used loop. Let's start by creating a range of numbers. So we just created a range of numbers from 1 through 10, including 10. Next, let's write our for loop. So the way our for loop works is we'll say for num in our case. It's just whatever you want to call each item as we're passing through the loop. In numbers, which is the range from above, and then each time inside the loop, we're going to print out the number. So let's go ahead and run that. So you can see each time it went inside the loop, we went ahead and print the current number that it was on. Now the cool thing about computers, they can repeat things many times. So we could change this to 100 if we want. And you'll see it does the same thing, this time from 1 through 100. Now we can change this to be 1 through 1,000, 1 through 1,000,000, whatever we want it to be. We're just going to keep it as 10 for our next example. So what if you wanted to iterate through the loop, but you didn't necessarily care to use the item each time? Well, we could do this. First, let's comment this out. Now it's very similar to above, except we're going to use an underscore instead of the name of the item each time it's going through. So this time we did for underscore in numbers, because we're not actually going to use each number as we go through. And then we'll print inside the loop. So let's run that. And you'll see each time it runs through the loop, it's just printing inside the loop, because we're not actually using the number this time. Now let's go ahead and comment out this loop for the next example. Now we're still going to use our numbers range from above, but this time we're going to use a for each closure. It basically does the same thing as the for loop from above, just does it in a closure this time. So this is basically just a fancier way. Using a closure, we can do the same thing. So we start with our numbers range, dot for each, and then num in, and num is going to be that each item as we go through. And once again, we're just going to print the number. Let's run that. And you'll see again, prints 1 through 10, just like above. Now in the for each, you can also decide not to use each item as you're passing through. So very similar to above, we'll just use an underscore. So let's comment this out and write the next for each. So just like above, we did the numbers dot for each, and then instead of num in, we're going to do underscore in, because we're not using the actual item each time we're going through. And then we'll just print inside the loop. So if we run this, we're just going to print inside the loop 10 times. Now there's another cool thing you can do with the for each. Let me show you. So just like in the previous for each, we're going to do numbers dot for each. In this case, we're going to do a little bit of shorthand. $0 is a way of using the item each time it's passing through the loop, but we're not actually going to give it a name. So this time we're just going to print the item as we go through. So if we run that, just like in the previous examples to where we did num in with the for each, or for num in numbers, we're basically doing the same thing, just doing a little bit of fancy shorthand to make that work. I might explain that a little further in a future video, but that's something else you can do. So let's comment the rest of this out above. Next, we'll show how we can loop through an array. So I'll start with creating an array. Now, just like the original for loop, let's go ahead and start that. So like above where we did for num in numbers, this time we're doing for name in gospel. And then each time we go through, we're going to print the name. So name wrote one of the gospels. Let's go ahead and run that. And you'll see each time it runs through the loop, it'll print the name wrote one of the gospels. Let's go ahead and comment that out. Now the next kind of loop is a while loop. Let's start this example creating a variable, and let's go ahead and create our while loop. Now the way the while loop works is we start with while, and then we're going to have a condition that can evaluate to true or false. So we're using lives is greater than 0. So if lives is greater than 0, it's going to go ahead and run the loop. Now inside of this loop, we're just going to print you have this many lives remaining. And then we'll subtract 1 from lives. So the first time it'll be while lives, which is 3, is greater than 0. And that'll be true, so we'll run the loop. We'll subtract 1, and then we'll try to run the loop again. So the next time, while lives, which is 2, is greater than 0, and once again it'll be true. And we're going to keep on looping over until that's no longer true. So let's run that. And you'll see the first 3 times it runs through, that evaluates to true. So you have 3 remaining, you have 2 remaining, and you have 1 remaining. Now with while loops, you have to be a little careful. Otherwise you can create an infinite loop. So if we just did while true, that would always be true. Now I don't want to actually create an infinite loop, so I'm going to start this with false instead. So if I made this true, it would ask while true. Well, yes, that is true. So let's print going and that would be at the end of the loop, and it would come back while true. Hey, again, it's true. So it would just keep on going and going because there's no way to exit that loop. So you got to be careful with infinite loops. If you create one of those, you might have to force quit your program. Otherwise, it'll just keep on running until the app crashes. So like we said above, you want to have a way to get out of the while loop. So in our first while example, we actually subtracted 1 from lives each time, and then once it was no longer greater than 0, the loop ended. Another way you can exit a while loop is add a break statement. Let's see what that looks like. So like above, we're actually starting with while true, which if we don't have a way to break out of that, that's going to create an infinite loop. But in this example, we're creating a variable counter that's starting at 0. So the first time it runs through, while true, well of course that's true. True is always true. And then we'll add 1 to the counter. We'll print past number and then that counter variable. Now here's where the break comes in. If counter is greater than 3, we'll break. What break does is, as you might guess, it breaks out of the loop. So let's run this. Now you'll see, even though while true is always going to be true, once that counter is greater than 3, we're going to go ahead and break out of the loop. So in this case, we're going to run the loop 4 times, because on the 4th time, counter is now 4, which is greater than 3, and we go ahead and break out of the loop. So there you have it, for loops and while loops, and also for each. Those are probably the most common types of loops, but there's a couple other examples I'd like to show. Let's comment this out. So to go back to for loops, there are some other things you can do with those as well. I'll show one more example of that. We could use dictionaries. So first we created our dictionary. Now let's go ahead and loop over that. Now before we would just do for item in range or array. In this case, we want to actually have the key and the value. So we might type something like this. For key, comma, value in scores. Now that works, but let's go ahead and use names that actually make sense. So we'll use name and score, and let's see how that looks. So each pass through the loop, we're going to print the person's name, and then their score is score. So let's run that. Now you'll see, we're actually using the key and the value. So Jack's score is 77, Jason's score is 99, and Joe's score is 88. Now you might notice this seems out of order from how the dictionary is typed above, but that's just because dictionaries don't retain their order. Either way, we're looping over each key and value in the dictionary. Now let's comment this out for the last example. First, I'll create a variable to hold our Boolean. Now this last loop is a repeat while loop. It looks like this. So we start off with repeat, and then what we want to do each time we're in the loop. So we'll just print inside the loop. And then after that, we'll do the while and then the condition. So the previous time we did a while loop, we did while condition and then went inside the loop. The difference with the repeat while is it'll run through the loop once before ever checking if the condition was true. It reminds me of a picture I saw of the Roadrunner and Coyote, to where the Roadrunner was doing a while loop and the Coyote was doing a repeat while. In the cartoon, it's a do while. That's just another way of doing repeat while in other languages. So you can see the Coyote ran through the loop one time without ever checking if the condition was true or false. Now I understand jokes aren't funny if you have to explain them, but whatever. So back to the repeat while loop. Let's go ahead and run that. Now you'll see, even though our condition is false, we still went inside the loop one time to print inside the loop, and then we checked our condition, which was false. And because it was false, we never ran that loop again. If it was true, obviously it would run the loop, which in this case would make it an infinite loop. Unless there was some way to break out of the loop, like we showed in examples above. So there you go, loops in Swift, and some basic things you can do with them. Anyway, if you liked the video, feel free to hit that like button, and I'll see you next time.